If some dude's profile said like, if you're above this weight, don't even contact me.
That
guy would be.
If you weigh 165 or over, you're dead. You don't exist to me.
Yeah,
that guy
would
be lambasted.
Exactly.
But when a woman's like, hey, if you're not
6 feet or
5'11"
6 foot tall or above,
that's just allowed. I just clapped so loud my ears hurt.
Let's do it. We're back.
Hello.
Welcome, everyone.
I like your sweater. Very festive.
Thank you. We got it. Let's hop into it, dude.
Okay.
No time to waste. So I started doing the Steven Crowder thing.
Yep.
And I mentioned this to you, but it was very difficult last week when I was making this Steven Crowder thing because I was doing it on his Change My Mind segment. And so I would type in, for instance, he's got one that is rape culture is a myth, change my mind. And I knew that there was a clip from that I wanted to grab where he does something. I forget if it was good or bad in this particular moment. So I type into YouTube, rape culture is a myth, change my mind, which is the exact title. And you can look it up yourself. It comes in anywhere around 6 or 7 on the ranked list of things. And above it are videos that have a few thousand views.
Right, so it's not like it's being beat out by the New York Times.
No, his video has 11 million views or something, this one. I forget exactly what it is. And it's number 6 or 7. It's in the green upvote percentage. And above it is all of these videos that have a few thousand views, pretty high dislike ratio, which you don't necessarily need to go off, but a title that is inarguably less precise than the one that I typed in.
Yeah.
And I swear it felt like I was back in the days of Alta Vista, where you're on a search engine and you're just going to the second and the third page looking for that thing that you want.
Yeah. Well, you weren't. You were more like in China.
Yeah.
It was less a search engine mistake than it was censorship.
It was crazy because I'm so used to treating Google as the one-stop shop. It's 1, 2, or 3 every time. And increasingly, it's that knowledge panel that makes it so you don't even have to click a link. The answer's right there for you. And it scared me. It scared me. It's how much I trust Google and how much implicit credence I give the first thing that comes up, and how clearly I was obviously searching for this Steven Crowder thing, and it said, no, you would rather watch these 6 things. This is what you need to see. And it's so obviously a political issue. I mean, Steven Crowder makes no bones about being a political commentary person.
Yeah. No, I remember when Hillary Clinton was running for president and people were saying that Google was manipulating searches to hide the things that were controversial about her, the mistakes she'd made while she was in office. And I gave it no credence. I went, that's crazy. And I didn't even check for myself by Googling those things. And then when you told me this, I had flashbacks to it. I went, I wonder if Google really was hiding the bad things about her while she was running for president.
I remember we actually met the son of the guy who did that research, and he told us this, and I was like, you're just trying to gas up your dad, you know? Like,
yeah, this is crazy.
This is absurd. Insane. Why would Google involve itself in
a presidential campaign,
in something really as petty as a presidential campaign? This happens every 4 years. Google hopefully outlives any particular
I've
candidate.
changed my mind.
I'm
not sure that Google's so nonpartisan.
Whether or not they're partisan, one could imagine that they had an agenda, which is to say, you know what, we're gonna trust the democratic vote of link sharing. You know what I mean? And we're gonna do our best to parse out not what is true at all, but what is popular, linked to, and in that way abdicate the responsibility of being the arbiters of what is true in the world, which is, it has an upside and a downside to it. But that's clearly not what they have done in this particular example, and I don't expect it to stop here, because why would it? Why would it stop with just vaccines, where you're no longer allowed to clearly rank things on Facebook that say that vaccines cause autism? You know, why stop there? Why not go to other things that you think are patently untrue? And it's terrifying. I just at this point accept that I can't know the truth about anything, because no one is interested in giving it to me. So I don't know what to make of it. It made it a very difficult breakdown to do, because I would
because you would remember a clip, you say, oh, it was in that video about socialism, and then you Google it and you couldn't find it.
And I type in, I was like, change my mind, like socialism is bad. I was like, okay, that's not the exact title. Like, socialism is evil, change my mind. And they just don't come up, and you have to scroll down. Steven Crowder, change my mind. When you typed his name in, that actually improved things. Do we want to, she's going to cry, or we got to?
She's alternating between crying and laying down, pouting.
Okay.
So
we'll let her do it.
I'll let her sit on the couch. I don't mind.
It's up to you. Got her?
We'll see.
We're back. The dog was having a hard time. No, but the
Didn't
one
like being apart from us.
the one there is an interesting philosophical question which comes of this, and it's, do you want a dictatorship of the masses when it comes to information? Meaning what I described in the first place, that people are allowed to be wrong, but Google's job would simply be to rank what is popular as measured by links and sharing and all that kind of stuff, to not make that executive decision? Or do you want somebody, maybe they're on your side, maybe they're not, who is the arbiter of what is true? And I think you prefer a dictatorship of the masses.
Well, I don't know, because that's easily manipulated. You just buy links.
Sure.
That's why they stopped doing that. It's because they went, oh, a bunch of people are purchasing.
No, that's not why they stopped.
They did. That's why they de-weighted links, and now they have like a complex algorithm.
So yeah, but the point is not that one should use links. The point is that one tries to create a complex algorithm that, rather than weighing in on what is true, simply says this is where the consensus stands as best we're able to suss out. And of course, people are going to try to game that all the time.
Yeah.
But they're not saying, look, if the consensus today is that vaccines cause autism, that's what's 1, 2, and 3. If 10 years from now it's something else, we're going to switch. It's not based on any particular research that we in this organization have done and that we feel is important to make sure that everyone agrees with, even if we determine that what is popular is bad or wrong. And I don't think you want a group of people at the top that are making those sort of intellectual elite decisions for the rest, but I don't know.
Sure. I put no thought into this, so I don't have an opinion on it.
Got it. All right, cool. What do you got?
Completely different, but I think it hyped me up. Justin, can you pull up those links I sent you?
Yes.
So I saw this from Tim Ferriss, this first one. Here, I don't know if you want to watch it. This dude is completely blind, and he is a better skateboarder than I was, with full sight and a year of practice. He's insanely good. And I saw this and I went, wow, anytime I've ever made an excuse that I can't do something, I'm just a chump. Because this guy is doing what everyone would have said is impossible. He's doing kickflips. He's grinding. He can't see. I can only imagine the perseverance.
How did he learn, I wonder? Do you happen to know if he was blind from birth, or if he...
I don't know.
If he skated and then was blinded?
I don't know. I think either way, what my takeaway was the power of just thinking you can do something and then putting a ton of effort into it is underrated.
Have you seen the guy who uses echolocation who's blind?
Dude, look at this guy. Look at this next video. I don't know if you've seen this. This guy has no legs. And he's a professional Tony Hawk sponsored skateboarder. Just absolutely insane. So yeah, this guy, again, no legs. He's doing kickflips. He's on a half pipe. He grinds rails. It seems deadly. He doesn't use gloves or a helmet, which is completely insane.
It's one thing when you bang your shin. It's another thing when you land on your fingers.
So yeah, this got me hyped. I was watching this and I thought to myself, I can do anything, which obviously has limits. My NBA dreams are not occurring. But yeah, that to me was a reminder that most people's beliefs that hold them back are false beliefs. That we have these limiting beliefs where you go, oh, I can't do this. I don't have legs. And he goes, no, I'm pretty sure I could be a Tony Hawk sponsored professional skateboarder.
I've been struggling with this because I was reviewing a script that somebody submitted that was on Conor McGregor, and it's on his confidence. And one of the points that they make is I believe they call it Pygmalion confidence, which is this idea that you only feed your brain positive things, no room for self-doubt, for the exact reasons that you're saying, because oftentimes you can achieve far more than anyone thought possible. But I feel like, and I don't know exactly where the line is, clearly you want to interact with reality in some ways. So I don't know what that means, but if Conor McGregor goes in and tries to wrestle Khabib and thinks that because he's so amazing, he's only fed himself positive thoughts that after 6 months of wrestling training, he's going to beat an undefeated greatest wrestler of all time, he gets stomped for 4 rounds.
Well, let's do Conor. Let's do Conor. So Conor's who the video is on. He starts out, he's on food stamps.
Yeah.
And he's a nobody. He's broke and no one knows him. And he goes, I'm going to be in the UFC. I'm 100% positive.
Yeah.
And then he puts the work in to outwork anyone else who wants to be in the UFC, which I think is important.
But I also, let's just correct, because he didn't outwork. I'm sure there are people that worked harder than him.
And he works smart. He trains intelligently, right? So those are his 3 things. He's putting a ton of time into the gym, a lot more when he was on the come up, actually, than he does now. And he's training intelligently. He's not just, oh, I'm going to become a fighter by swimming. You know what I mean? He's got professional coaches, but He thinks he's going to be in the UFC. He doesn't at that point say he's going to be a champ, but he's just like, I'm going to be in the UFC. And he does it. He gets to the UFC. And then the same thing, right? He says, I'm going to be a champ, while simultaneously working really hard and having a good coach. And then eventually his positive talk runs out, right? He goes, I'm going to be the best boxer in the world. Reality wins, right? Floyd Mayweather is a better boxer. But it got Conor $100 million into the UFC, into the champion. So I do think, actually, even though there are limits to it, 99.99% of people, including Conor, are very well served by raising up.
Do you know what I'm going to say, though?
What?
Survivor bias. Do you know how many interviews of pimple-faced kids there are out there who work hard and work smart?
Yeah, but you know the study. Where the amount of rock stars that make it who think that they're destined to or that God is on their side is disproportionate. There's a power to belief, even if it doesn't guarantee success. So I'm not saying that if you're blind, you can definitely be a skateboarder. What I'm saying is to think that it is impossible is to your detriment in most cases.
I would question that. What I think we can agree on is that the only way to achieve that is with that belief. That's the only way to get there. But let's pretend that you're 19 years old, you live in Dublin or anywhere else, you're not good at MMA. You can go study to be an electrician and perform, or you can dedicate yourself for 5 or 6 years to getting punched in the head and trying to do the same to other people. What should the average person do? There's only one Conor McGregor, and there's hundreds, if not thousands, of other people. And I'm telling you, he didn't work.
Well, most people don't have to give up this skateboarder doesn't have to not have a job to try to be a professional skateboarder.
Sure.
You know what I mean? What he has to do is when he gets off of work, practice skateboarding. You know what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. When we first started this business, I kept my job. You know what I mean? I didn't need to have such an insane belief in myself. I'm going to be an entrepreneur at all costs. I'm going to take out a loan to start the business, quit my job, go into debt. What I did say was, I am so confident this is going to work that after my 12-hour shift at investment banking, I'm going to put time into entrepreneurship. Mm-hmm. So I do think there's a way to do it without risking life and limb. But I do think that part of the reason we have a business is because we were just convinced. People would say, what if it doesn't work out? And we go, start another one. Mm-hmm. What if that doesn't work out? Start another one. Mm-hmm. It never occurred to me that on try 10, the business wouldn't work.
Well, I think what you're saying, and this is like Conor had a very specific goal. I mean, I'm going to be a UFC fighter, which is more achievable than being a UFC champion for sure.
Yeah.
And I would argue, you know what? You could do that. Like you're going to be a hard worker. You're going to slave away. You got decent odds of that. We set a broad goal. Our goal was actually like live in Brazil and make $3,000 a month each.
Yeah. And the blind guy, I'm sure his goal isn't, I'm going to be the best skateboarder in the world and a gold medalist, And he's not trying, from what I've seen, he's not trying to be or publicly declaring it. But he's saying, I'm going to be a good skateboarder. I'm going to be good at this and to be able to do this in a way that's fun and impressive.
Sure.
So I think, you don't want to just say that your goal is this thing that 1 in a billion people can. I'm going to be LeBron James, right? Mm-hmm. But I think that certainly you are helped by setting goals that are outside of most people's comfort zone and then pursuing them not recklessly, but persistently. Mm-hmm.
And that's, I mean, I agree very much with what you said. Of course, the devil's in the details of where one defines reckless, right? I mean, certainly stepping into an octagon is a reckless act for everyone who does it, right? And persistently, at what point should one quit? I totally agree with you.
Well, the other thing is you can pivot without quitting, which I think is important. You know what I mean? Harder in this specific example with Conor, but for us, for instance, I want to be an entrepreneur. Charisma on Command did not have to work for me to be an entrepreneur. Yes. In fact, it's our third business. We started out teaching people parkour.
Yeah.
So I think there is a way. The most important thing is just at the end of the day, say like, what is your goal? Is your goal really to sell parkour DVDs? Or is it to do something you think is interesting? Or is it to be your own boss? Or is it just to work remotely? I think getting clear, or is it multiple? You can have a high goal, but always checking back in on why am I doing this, I think is important.
Yeah. So one thing that might tie this together that Scott Adams talks about is systems over goals. And his general point is, in any given endeavor, you cannot guarantee success. Mm-hmm. The only thing that you have a large quantity of control over is the skill that you take after putting in the effort. Mm-hmm. So whether or not our business worked, we learned how to start a website. I learned how to market a blog. These are things that even if I didn't become an entrepreneur, perhaps I could go to Google and be like, let me on your content marketing team or some other company that I liked. So what he advises, and I think maybe what anyone can do to play in the high return, low risk field, is pick things that are systematic like that. So if you're saying, take Conor McGregor, for instance, if he views his fight against Khabib not just as a fight against Khabib, but goes, what's going to make me a better MMA fighter, maybe it is worth it for him to invest all that time into wrestling. Yeah. But if he's singularly being like, no, I'm going to out wrestle this guy and then go back to stand-up fighting 6 months from now, probably not the best way to train for him. Who do you think is going to win, him or Cowboy?
Well, I think probably Conor.
Yeah.
I don't think Conor's ever been knocked out, right? He loses by submission.
He's gotten knocked around, and then he gave up his neck to Nate. But yeah.
That's fair. Nate did box him up. I don't know. Cowboy's just really good at getting knocked out.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I love Cowboy. I've been a big Cowboy fan. I've been hoping he would retire for years. Mm-hmm. So
they've had no press.
No.
Have I missed anything?
No, I think Conor's just over it.
So
he doesn't want to do it.
I want to make a video on him, but I'm so tentative to make any call because one of two things is possible. One, he is so dedicated to his craft right now that he's like, I'm not showing up for a single press conference.
Yeah.
Two, he has so much money and doesn't care about anything except promoting Proper 12 that he's putting in half time at the gym and no time on the press circuit.
Neither. Press just isn't fun. Mm-hmm. I think it's number 3, which is I'm still going to be the biggest draw. Oh, it's not going to be a record-breaking pay-per-view? Well, the UFC still needs me.
Yeah.
This is your life to some degree, right? At some point, if you just are comfortable with your level of success, your priority is to not do things you don't like. Mm-hmm. That was a lot of negatives, but you avoid things you dislike. You avoid things you dislike. Yeah. And I think that's it. No one likes press. Every fighter goes, this sucks. I don't want to talk to the media. I like punching people in the face and hanging out with my family.
It just hurts me because I want to make a video on where his mindset is at, and I've got nothing.
Yeah,
so it's a tough video to make because I'm pulling from old clips or speculating on where his mindset, and I have no idea.
Actors are the same. Have you noticed that? In a lot of the press tours, they'll just come out and be like, yeah, this sucks. I don't want to do this. I don't want to talk to you. They say it in jokes. It's like, how you going? It's like, it's my 9th interview of the day. How are you doing?
These junkets, yeah.
Yeah. They don't know.
So what can you tell us about Avengers Endgame? It's just like,
nothing.
Oh God.
Nothing. Yeah, no one likes to do press. And Connor's just big enough he can say,
well, Sean Evans was interesting from that perspective because they all enjoy hot ones. Or many people enjoy hot ones.
In hindsight, though, no one's.
Oh, they all say this is the most fun I've had while they're there.
Yes, but I still don't think they're excited to sign up. In fact, most of them go, "I'm surprised by how much I enjoyed this."
Yes.
When they sit down, they go, "It's a YouTube channel. Like, I don't want to do this."
Yeah. He's gonna ask me, what were you thinking when you got your first role? Was that really exciting?
No, they're pleasantly surprised. They go, "This sucked a lot less than I imagined."
Yeah, by the quality of his questions. No, that was a good one. I'm glad that one has done well.
Sean Evans.
Long haul. Yeah. What else do we have for today? Did you read any of the book that was sent to us?
Some, but I'm still on the parts that aren't new.
Me too.
Yeah.
So love yourself like your life depends on it. I only had 2 initial thoughts. One, it's very good. Yeah. I think it's great. I think the idea of self-love is probably the field that I'm most interested in compared to confidence or even charisma at this point. That's more fascinating to me. But there was a couple things that I thought were interesting. The most effective books, I feel like, and maybe even our videos and maybe even our programs, I don't know if we do this to the same degree, probably, are built on this like almost essential half-truth, which is that this is easier than it is. Mm-hmm. So when I think of the 4-hour work week, it's called the 4-hour work week.
Yeah.
Right? And you're going through it and you're like, I just get a t-shirt, make a Google ad, and collect profit.
Yeah. And no one I know works 4 hours. You and I don't. No. Tim Ferriss doesn't.
No, but because he framed it in this eminently achievable way.
Yeah, if it were called the work remotely 60 hours a week, but at your leisure.
Yeah, and it is less than I think many jobs, but it's framed so easy that you take the steps. Yeah. And similarly, when he's going through, it's like self-love it's so simple, it's so basic, you just say this. And it's an incredibly powerful thing. I think I think the practice of speaking to yourself and saying I love myself is still very good, but certainly keeping that habit is hard.
Yeah.
And doing it over the long haul, I mean, there's
he even
second part of the book.
Keeping it is hard. That's the funny thing about these habits. I feel this way about meditation. I feel this way about the love yourself meditations. When you need it when you're going through a breakup and everything is terrible.
Yeah.
And you read this book and it goes, the reason you're sad is because you have a hole in your heart. You tried to fill it with another person. And that's a poor strategy. You need to fill this internally because you will never dump yourself. And you're like, yeah, I'm in pain. Because what you do, it takes 7 minutes a day every day. And here's the exact strategy. You go 7 minutes a day, no problem. I would do this for 3 hours to make the pain go away. And you do it every day and it works. And you start to feel better. And then the pain goes away. And all of a sudden you go 7 minutes a day. I don't think I have to do it today. And it stops. And so you don't have any health built up basically for when the next blow comes. So it's weird because you could prevent the devastation if you kept the practice up, but that's so hard to remember when you feel okay.
The book, it's really interesting. There's this book that I'm reading. It's called A Master's Secret Whispers, and it's framed as a dialogue between the master, the Zen master guy, and the student. And the student asks essentially the question of like, why do I, I start and I give up. Like, why do I do that? And he says as much. It's like, you're just running from pain. What you need to learn when this is hard is to shun, I don't think he says shun, but to release happiness in the same way. Like what you want is, you don't actually want freedom from the cycle. You just want freedom from the downside.
Sure. That's exactly what I want.
And what you will potentially maybe one day realize is that they're interconnected. There is no up without a down. There is no thrill without that sinking come down feeling. And so when you get that, you will be less drawn away from your meditation practice in the times when things are good, because the good times will captivate you less. But if you try to do that, you're still just running for the bad, so don't worry about it. You're not going to get to be
What is the answer? Just do it enough?
It's a really interesting... So the answer is...
what is the answer?
There's nothing you can do, is what he says. The fact that you've asked me this question shows that you're not there, and you're not there. And it's interesting because I've been wrestling with this. There's this idea of being enlightened, and then the student always asks, what do I have to do to be enlightened? And it's like, as soon as you've asked that question, you're just farther away from it. And the paradox is that you go, okay, I won't ask it. It's like, no, you're still, you're still trying. Eventually, life hits you and hurts you and it makes you suffer, and you've ridden the roller coaster so many times that it just happens. It just clicks. And no longer are your meditations for something. They are for themselves, you know, and it's no longer to escape the pain of the breakup. It is in and of itself calls to you even on your best day.
I don't know if I told you this. Our friend Dylan went to a Vipassana retreat. 10-day, I think it was. And I was like, how was it? Expecting him to say it was hard, it was boring. He said it was euphoric.
Wow.
It was 10 days, no speaking, meditating every single day. And he said it was very quickly euphoria, which I thought was interesting.
Good for him. I sense that I'd struggle tremendously.
Well, he's been meditating for years. He didn't just hop in.
Yeah. No, he's been doing all that stuff.
He's the guy that runs Mind Bloom. We've talked about Mind Bloom.
Have you continued to do it?
I've done 2 sessions, and I'm going to do my 3rd this week.
Got it. I've burned through all 4.
Nice.
I couldn't get the dosing right.
I got a question for you. Speaking of F tangents or F transitions, how is your Cupid's poison arrow experiment going?
Oh, I mean, I told you. So the Cupid's poison arrow.
I just want to wrap this up. We brought it up on the podcast
3 weeks ago. I read this book, Cupid's Poison Arrow, that talks about the practice of carezza, which is essentially, if you're in a relationship, you can engage in intercourse but no orgasm. And the entire idea, even if you're not in a relationship, is that orgasm creates that cycle that we were talking about of high and low, and it guarantees a low. And it promises, like many of these books do, that all of your life's troubles will be resolved. You'll be fitter,
all
stronger.
Your problems are caused by your ejaculate.
More focused. You're going to be deeper in love. And I found that the biggest shift is that I got the flu.
Nice.
Nothing positive.
Nice. Happened. And came a little bit more twitchy, right? A little bit less calm.
Well, it did expose that I really wanted dopamine in other ways. It was what I would say. So like I was trying at the same time to not look at our business statistics. And I think that honestly made it more difficult. And then the one thing, I mean, we stopped the girl that I was dating and the next day she said, I love you 3 times more than I have the last 3 weeks.
Really? I didn't know that.
She's like, this does not work. She's like, you became my friend after that. And I was like, yeah, we're not even very good friends. Like,
that's awesome.
Like we wouldn't be, we're friends, but we wouldn't like hang out as buddies if we weren't dating.
No, that's fascinating. So, because you guys were having sex, but just no orgasms.
Correct.
And she said that lack, because the book says that the lack of orgasms brings a couple closer.
She said, I love you essentially 1/3 as much.
When you were not orgasming.
Yeah.
Interesting.
And
Good to know. Don't trust everything you read in a book.
I think that it's worth trying for a lot of people because I do believe they have a lot of testimonials in there. And I think this is true of increasingly, I'm realizing, with fitness, self-love, charisma, all these things. There are standard routes that are likely to work for many people, like low-carb diet is probably going to leave you shredded, except if your ancestry is from a different area as most other people, in which case you might want a low-fat diet, and that's going to be very different for you. So I think it's the same thing with this. If it's intriguing to you, give it a try. It's 3 weeks. You're supposed to see benefits from weeks 2 to 3. I did not.
I tried it way back in the day. Also did not enjoy it, but
so we
must have similar genetics.
I'm not saying that it's dead wrong. I'm just saying that it's not for me.
Yeah.
And I'm happy that I did the experiment. And I'm also happy that it's over.
Makes sense.
No bueno. Did you find anything good came of it?
I mean, this was years ago, but I remember that I quickly stopped. Nothing that made me want to try it again.
Yeah. We, another F transition. We were going to try to squeeze one of these in before the Christmas break that we had. I came down with the flu, so we couldn't do it. But you said, the hardest work you've ever done for this podcast. You told me this as we walked out of the Rise of Skywalker. And you said, that's the hardest I've ever worked for the podcast. Suffice to say,
we were going to talk about the Rise of Skywalker because we had a podcast the day after it came out. So we went and saw a midnight show. And I liked the first part. I could not wait for that movie to end.
Yeah, I don't know if I wrote anything down, and it's not even worth ripping into. It's been several weeks at this point, but we did not dig it. I was generally disappointed in the same comment that everyone has made, is that it seemed like they started a story, and then the second guy was like, no.
Yeah. That was my sense too. You guys clearly didn't have this written from start to finish.
And then the end guy was like, just kidding. She was special all along. Also, they love each other. Like, what?
No, it's great. Clearly, there was supposed to be some Finn-Rey romance at one point, and he's like, I have to tell you something. And then they just throw it away. Spoilers. So that she can kiss Kylo Ren. No, the whole thing was terrible. The one thing I thought was interesting, and I have thought this before in other movies. Have you ever seen Nightcrawler with Jake Gyllenhaal?
No.
Who you follow with the camera determines who you root for.
Yeah.
There's nothing redeeming about the guy Nightcrawler with Jake Gyllenhaal. He's not committing his crimes for a family. There's no ulterior positive motive. He's just a guy that does bad things for the pursuit of his goals. But because he is the character the camera follows, you find yourself rooting for him. Like, don't get caught by the cops.
Yeah.
Why don't you want this guy caught by the cops? He's just a criminal. Same thing here. They follow these rebels who are very ends justifies the means, because they go to these random planets, they hijack cars, they blow stuff up, they kill tons of stormtroopers, and the whole time you're just like, yeah, that was great. Woo! Oh, I'm so happy they stole that car from those innocent people. If you just had the camera following other people, these could clearly be horrible antagonists. Terrorists, thieves, you know what I mean? And so that's what I think is so interesting about these movies, to me at least.
Yeah. Well, they almost, in the first movie, I was like, they're going to do it. When Finn walks out and he's got the blood on his stormtrooper thing, like, they're going to humanize them.
Yep.
We're going to recognize that there's been people in here for all these movies. It's going to be amazing.
Yeah, it's going to be tragic, the death of all these stormtroopers.
He starts ripping through. Yeehaw! Like,
he starts killing his own brothers. Like, they're you, Finn. Maybe they're one horrible experience away from waking out of their trance.
Exactly. Nope.
But no, just in general, I think that's an interesting look into the human psyche, and it kind of ties to that truism of you can't hate anyone if you fully understand them, right? Anyone you feel anger towards or hatred towards, if you understood their childhood trauma or what happened to them that day.
Yeah.
My friend had an experience like this at Date with Destiny. Some guy was kind of rude. I'll give you the short version. Some guy was kind of rude to him. He thought, man, what a jerk. 3 days later, there's the part where Tony says, is anyone here suicidal? And the guy, very begrudgingly, he's arms crossed, hood up, like clearly he's not doing it for attention. Just like, and stands up. They've been sitting next to each other the whole event. And my friend goes, wow, I thought this guy was a jerk because he said a couple things, but really he just didn't have the mental energy to think about me because he's trying to not kill himself. He's here fighting the urge to just end it all. And it's just another, the things, we just love the people we know and understand, and we have less tolerance for the people we don't know.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
I mean, I wonder if that just comes back to the way in which we experience life, which is we are the cameramen of our own.
That's what I'm saying. That's exactly what I'm saying.
Of course, he's a good guy. I've been following him around for over 30 years.
That's exactly what I'm saying.
Completely. Everything he's done is justified. And those other people on the road, they cut him off.
Yeah.
You know, like,
no, you justify yourself. This is the best part is if you, in LA, find anyone who is a pedestrian and a driver. Because normally when they're walking, they get pissed when cars try to go and they say, you should stop. And then when they're driving, they get pissed that pedestrians are in their way because they think they should go.
Yeah.
And it's, again, just the idea, this is my ketamine takeaway of more empathy for other people. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and Star Wars reminded me of that. Just whatever perspective you have, whatever camera you're following, that's who you think the good guys are.
Yeah. The one that I love from LA is, and the same day I've probably been on both sides of this, is you're waiting in line for an exit and people are blowing past you, cutting in, and you're like, those mother...
Yeah.
And then later in the day, you're in that lane, and you're like, woohoo!
Yeah.
Make a great time. Squeeze it in at the last moment.
Yep.
And you're like, wait a second. I thought something about those type of people. I can't remember what it was.
No, yeah, different standards for different people.
Sure. Anything else that you had written down in the last week and a half?
Oh, man, I have so many notes from Star Wars, but we won't beat that to death.
No.
I was taking notes the whole time. Every time I was frustrated, I just went, going to talk about this on the podcast.
Yeah.
There's one thing I thought was kind of interesting. The news itself isn't interesting, but I thought maybe it could lead to an interesting discussion, which is there is a French company whose a couple of high-ranking people were recently indicted. I don't know what the criminal charges will be, but they were found guilty of creating a corporate culture so toxic that 35 employees killed themselves. And they were basically, they're going to get arrested or they're going to face punishment for this. And I thought that was interesting because the problem is one that from the outside is avoidable, which is you hate your job so much that you're going to kill yourself. You can get another job. But for these 35 people, it seemed inescapable, so much so that they killed themselves. And I don't know, I just kind of wanted to bring that up in case there's anybody listening or watching who feels like their circumstances are so terrible that they're suicidal or maybe just depressed or angry, as maybe hopefully a moment to pause and remind people that it's not as inescapable as you think. Mm-hmm. If you hate your relationship and you're thinking about killing yourself because your significant other is abusive, you can do everything in your power to get out. You can call the cops, you can move out, you can leave, people didn't want to leave their jobs because they didn't want to not have a source of income.
Yeah.
So they killed themselves. I wish I could have grabbed each one of those people and just said, let's just try a month of no income. Yeah. Let's just try 1 month of quit today. Forget everything. You'll find food some other way, right? You'll go to family, you'll beg, you'll dance on the street. This isn't as inescapable as you think. And I just thought it was an interesting topic. I don't know if you have any thoughts on it.
I mean, of course, they always do. It reminds me of the book that I'm reading, or finished today. It's called The Soul of Money. And it talks a lot about one of the big underlying myths that makes people not give to charity, but also makes people sad, suicidal, all those other things, is the myth of scarcity. That there is not enough, that there is only one way, that it's got to be competitive. It's me or them. Mm-hmm. And if I lose the things that I have, I will never recover something to make up for it. Mm-hmm. And the book is really good because we naturally compare ourselves to the people in our similar circumstances. Yep. None of my friends are losing their jobs. I'm doomed. And this woman, has been to the streets of Calcutta with Mother Teresa, where people have nothing. And it really powerfully illustrates that abundance can be felt when there's no material goods around you. Yeah. Like when food is sparse. She has these just heartwarming stories of people giving their last loaf of bread with the belief that, oh no, like I always get enough. I always get enough. And it made me cry like 6 times. It was a great book.
Wow.
There was this
What's it called?
The Soul of Money.
Soul of Money. It's
too long by a third, like maybe even 2/3. Like if they just trimmed it down, I think it'd be better. But the one story that did make me cry was she's got 2 meetings in the same day, Chicago, New York. First one's in Chicago. It's this company that had a bad spat of PR. And so they need to donate. She's the founder of the Hunger Project, and they help people with hunger. Get them food and teach them. There's a whole other story there. But she goes to the very top, the rarefied air CEO. Yeah. She's like, the air is different, legitimately, at the top of this skyscraper. And we sit down. I tell him what we do. He's completely disinterested. And at the end, he reaches into a pre-printed check for $50,000, grumbles it across the table, and ushers me out. And 13 minutes.
Huh.
I get on an airplane, I fly back to New York, and I go to Harlem. And this is many years ago, even when Harlem was like not like a place that people hung out all the time.
Yeah.
It was
Bad Harlem.
not even bad, just like low income. And she goes and they're in a basement in Harlem, and it's a bunch of community members, and she starts talking about, you know, these people in India who have nothing. And she says, you know, if you can give. And the one woman in the back stands up and says, money has never been like a river into my life. It's been a trickle at best. But whenever it comes in, I try to share what I have. So I'd like to give you. And she pulls out, you know, 5s, 10s. She's like, this is my $50 that I was going to spend on food. But these people need it more. And then I'm going to cry. Everybody in the room gives money. Like, and they go in and they fish out and they ask their friends, and it's 1s, it's 2s. And she says she got, you know, $350 from them. And it was better than the 50. And so the story actually has a coda. So the next day she says, I can't take this guy's money, even though it could make a huge difference. And she writes a letter, sends back the check to the guy and says, you know, find an organization that you genuinely care about to do this, and thinks nothing of it. 10 or so years later, she gets a letter from him. He says, hey, you might not remember me. I've since retired from this job, and I've been reviewing my career, and only one day stands out in my mind, and that was when I got your letter. And it blew my world open, because you weren't playing by the rules that everybody else played by. You didn't want money at any cost. It wasn't, you know, every dollar wasn't the same to you. It mattered where it came from. And I've thought about it. It's impacted me, and I'd like to try to make amends for what I did. And then he wrote her a check for much, much more. She didn't say how much than she had originally gotten. But it's a great book. It powerfully demonstrates that, and I know this doesn't fit the economic view of things, but that every dollar is not created equal, that they come with intents, and that those intents can be felt years, months later in secondary effects, that if you were just to go, well, $50,000, that's X amount of wells, that's X amount of food, like we definitely need that. Or if you're in a business, you go, well, he's offering that money, even though he technically can't afford that thing that he's going to buy, like a dollar's a dollar, and he said he wants to give it to me. She powerfully, with anecdotes, illustrates that you can get more, there is enough, there is abundance, and if you take less today, share more today, it comes back. So it's a cool book. It definitely inspired me to think differently about the way that I have given money in the past. Yeah, because I've just written big numbers. And not been, you know, I feel like I need to participate.
I'm doing this from a philosophically rational point of view.
That's exactly where it's been. It's like, you know, if I do this, I'm whatever, morally clear. Like this is guilt money.
I'm not greedy.
Yes, exactly. So check it out. It's a good book. I recommend it.
Cool.
What were you saying before that reminded me of that? You were saying of the people who killed themselves.
The people who killed themselves, yeah. So this is a tangent related to that. I don't know if you have anything else.
Mm-hmm. Well, no, I mean that story just made me. This book was good because it really it shows you some of the poorest of the poor, and it disrupts the scarcity mindset, right?
Which is I need this job so badly that rather than quit, I'll just kill myself.
And it's almost like if these people had an ability to interact or to become conscious of the poorest people in India, they wouldn't have killed themselves.
Yeah.
They would have seen the rich possibilities that life has, even when you don't have a lot. And like, not only might they have lived, they might have opened up in other ways.
So yeah, that's why I wanted to bring it up.
Yeah.
Just if anyone's listening or watching and is in a down spot, it's less inescapable than you may imagine. Kind of related. I think this is more of a interesting political philosophical discussion. The reason that this culture for this company was so terrible is actually not because workers don't have rights in France. It's because they have so many rights. And so you can't fire someone, because if you fire them, apparently there's just an exorbitant amount of severance. So the reason, and this is not justifying what they did is terrible, but the reason they did it was because they were hoping people would quit. Because if you quit, you don't get your severance. So they were saying this is so punitive to fire these people that we'll just try to create a culture that makes them leave voluntarily. And I think that's an interesting thing to think about, because a lot of times I see people critiquing the current system of the US, saying we should change this, we should be more libertarian, we should be more socialist, whatever it is, both sides. And I think people should maybe just recognize that these systems are complicated and there's a lot of second and third order effects to the changes you want. So public healthcare for everyone. I'm totally game in theory. What does that mean? One hospital per city? What will the quality of the healthcare be, et cetera? And I don't want to dwell on it, but I just think it's interesting to me, and I think maybe interesting to other people. These suicides happened because the government of France says if you fire someone, you have to give them a bunch of money.
Which
and these
creates
people
a different incentive,
had where they went, okay, well, we're just going to try to get them to quit. And I'm not justifying what they did. I'm just pointing out that sometimes you don't get the results you're hoping for when you make systemic changes to governments.
Interesting. Do you have any idea what the toxicity was, either you or Justin? Like, I'd be super curious.
Like what they were doing?
Yeah.
I don't know.
How do you get 30? I guess it could.
Well, I read about. So this again, I read the comments of the article, right? So these are not the people who killed themselves, obviously, but they're people from France or from other places who dealt with this, and they say that a lot of times it'll be emotional abuse, like you suck at this, blah blah blah, or it'll just be give them no work at all. And one guy was saying, I had nothing to do for 8 hours a day, and I've never been so depressed. You think it's going to be awesome because, I play on the internet and that's fun for 3 days. He says, when they took me from having a call, because he's customer service, a call every 10 minutes or so, to 3 calls a day that were 10 minutes long and then 7.5 hours of doing nothing, I've never entered into such a depression.
Wow.
Yeah, which I thought was interesting.
I'd be really fascinated because obviously, I would just like to know
What
more
are they
about
doing?
that. Because it does, if this is what you need to do to get a higher percentage of people to kill themselves, the inverse of that would be something that could imaginably take people out of a depression.
Yeah. So I'll tell you, the inverse from what I could gather is 2 things. One, having a community and a team that you like, having a boss that treats you well, and coworkers that you enjoy spending time with, and work that you find rewarding
and meaningful.
So the worst thing actually isn't doing, and I've done this actually, it's not doing manual labor. It's doing nothing. It's being forced to sit and stare at a wall for 8 hours.
I mean, solitary is within jail. That's the punishment you give to someone in jail.
No, I landscaped, and it's not the funnest thing in the world. A bee stung me in the eye. I had a lot of calluses and cuts, but time does go. And there was one other guy I worked with, and I liked talking to him. And yeah, that's better than if I had to sit in the truck alone while he did the landscaping.
Yeah.
And just be alone for 8 hours. So yeah, I think that's the key to having a good job appears to be work with people you like and do something where you enjoy what you do and you like the cause that you're working towards. If you're a carpenter because you like working with your hands and you can be proud of the stuff you create afterwards, that's actually going to make you really happy relative to if you like working with your hands but you try to go be an investment banker because it makes more money.
Yeah.
You'll hate it.
Well, dude, speaking of second order effects, that's one of the things that this Soul of Money book talks about. Is it talks about Live Aid. It's like we all got together and we had a concert and we raised $50 million and we dumped it on Ethiopia. Here's stuff. And then I came back to Ethiopia, 6-7 years later, and nothing had changed. Like, in fact, if according to this woman, the only thing that had changed is that people felt helpless. They felt like unless we get another handout, we're doomed. And so what she advocates for, and I think the microcosm is the family unit. Like if you just give your kid $10 million, you may cripple him.
Yeah.
But if you can instead offer opportunities in which this person can learn, develop skills, succeed, get their hand held at the beginning and then taken away, and then with a little bit more coaching, that's the type of person that becomes self-sufficient.
You want to help them be the guy that says, I did this all myself while growing up in an upper middle class society with good public schools and good roads. That's what you're trying to, I built this from the ground up. Once I was carried to the finish line. That's what you're trying to create.
Well, I mean, and it's interesting. She talks about, so she goes to Ethiopia and what can we do here? And a lot of the people that wind up making the biggest impact are those that then start micro charities within their own country. And so that, the Grameen Bank, which was a guy, I believe his name is Yusuf Muhammad or Muhammad, I don't know his name, who started doing micro loans to women so that they could start sewing or whatever little thing they wanted to do. When these people got involved and were trying to help other people, but not in a way that was with a handout, with a way that was like, no, you got to pay me back.
Yeah.
They actually did better than strict, oh, here's a gift, I'll see you never. You know what I mean? Which is kind of like the deadbeat dad that shows up. He's built this giant business. He shows up, he gives you a ton of money and then disappears for 5 years. Like that person is going to struggle more than someone who had a middle-class parent that participated with them. And I thought that was really interesting. And I do think the caveat there is that there are certainly things, and I think Charity Water falls into this, like, just help people get water. You know what I mean? Like, whether or not they build the well, I think that can be valuable. But if you are starving to death or don't have oxygen or water or something like that, keeping you alive can be a valuable thing to do.
Well, they said that one of the most beneficial charities per dollar is a charity that cures parasites.
Yep.
Because it doesn't fix your hunger. It doesn't give you money. But what it does, which I have never thought of, is when you're a kid in school in Africa and you get a parasite that takes you out for a couple months, you're behind forever. Basically, you fall behind that year and then your grades aren't good. You have to get held back, or you're behind the next year. And they said that by just giving people these quick cures that we have in America,
30-cent pills,
for that make the parasites die so the kid can stay in school, that has a tremendous trickle-down effect in his life, which is interesting. Because you're just enabling him to learn and function. So yeah, curing that kind of stuff, taking care of the problems that knock out your ability to basically fend for yourself or learn to fend for yourself. That's the most helpful stuff.
I think that's William McCaskill. I think it's Doing Good Better. It's the book on effective altruism, where he talks about all these different things.
I thought the book was just called Effective Altruism.
It might be effective. I thought it was Doing Good Better. I believe it's William McCaskill. I don't remember. It's been a year plus since I've read it. But yeah, no, that's struck me as well.
Yeah.
Just like, interesting. Like, enabling people to help themselves. And then, of course, this is the difficulty of being a parent, which is, when do I step in and bail this kid out? And when do I,
you know what happened? Do you know what kind of happened to me? I got mono. I don't know if you know this. I got mono in high school, and they say, here's the curriculum, teach yourself. But I had mono. I was completely couch ridden, right? So I get back and, I managed to catch up in every subject except for physics. And in physics, I take a test. I was an A student. I take a test and I fail it. I think just straight up F it. And the teacher goes, listen, I get it. You tried to teach yourself for a month about these complicated things. I'm going to give you a retest, different questions, but same concepts a week later. Okay. I was like, okay, cool. Yeah, I got this. I stay after school because I still have to do my regular class. Take it again. C something, like C minus. And I only ever gotten A's. And she just pulls me aside. She goes, listen, I've had health issues. I'm just going to, you get a 0 out of 0 on this. It's not going to affect your grade. Just start attending class again and learn from me, because you clearly can't teach yourself physics. So I had a similar thing. If I had had a less understanding teacher, that was my senior year, so I was probably already in college, but you can imagine that happens your sophomore or junior year, less understanding teacher. I would have been screwed. I could not possibly teach myself that stuff for some reason.
And well, then it's tough. And then you hear these stories, and I believe them, of teachers who go super hard on people, who the hardest teacher they ever had, who doesn't take it, they get sick, and they say, no, work anyway.
And but I was a nerd, dude. I was sitting at the front of the class taking note, like.
Oh, I'm not saying that I believe you when you say that was appropriate for you. The difficult.
Oh yeah, I'm saying I think the reason she did that is because prior to that I had aced everything and was a loser. I was just sitting there in the front with glasses and big eyes, excited about physics. So I think she's like, I don't need to tough love this kid.
Yeah, that's the difficult question. And I think you can have the same situation with two different people with two different backgrounds. You go, no, this one needs to be told to buckle down, and this one needs a break. And that's, I think, what's tough about not just charity, but being a parent.
Parenting, dude, parenting's so hard. I've not been a parent, but the older I get, the more I realize it's so hard.
Well, what you do for me, my parents gave me such a long leash, because I was like, I'm going to sleep at Ben's, we're going to go play Risk. And we would stay up all night and play Risk.
Yeah.
And so I'm 17, 18, and then my brother and sister are younger. Like, I'm going to go have a sleepover. And what do you know? They're drinking. And not that drinking is the worst thing in the world, and kids survive that phase, but you could do the same exact thing with two different people and get two wildly different results.
Sure.
I paved such an easy path for my brother and sister.
Yeah.
They had such a long leash of trust to go on because I did nothing. And then they ruined it. Lucky nobody came after that.
Yeah. That's all I got, man.
That's it?
We've exhausted my list.
All right, let's do whatever Justin brings.
Cool.
Justin, bring the heat, bud.
First thing up is using AI to talk to animals, like
Ooh.
Dr. Doolittle.
Oh, how do we do that?
So basically, right now, researchers from MIT and Google are applying AI right now to figure out how to decode ancient human scripts. So the precursor to Hebrew, and then something called Linear B.
Oh, that's
which I've never heard of.
fascinating.
Yeah. So basically, what it does is the AI will search text to see how often a certain word appears next to every other word, and then use patterns in a multi-dimensional parameter space to kind of figure out where those words lie in meaning.
That's incredible.
Why does that help talk to animals?
So
go ahead.
Yeah. So what's going to happen is they're hypothetically imagining, like, for example, whales, their songs, if they communicate in a word-like structure, then you can use the algorithm to decode the sounds they make and then figure out what each sound means in like this multi-dimensional space and then kind of learn to define them.
Interesting.
So I'll give you an example. Your dog whimpers.
Yeah.
Your dog versus your dog whimper growls. It's like you can intuit that paired in certain ways, these have different meanings.
Sure.
And so they're applying it, I guess, to human languages. And then the question is...
But you'll be able to communicate with that animal at the same level that an animal can communicate. Well, that's not that helpful.
Still cool, man.
What I need to do is be like, listen, I know you want to get pet. Don't jump. I will pet you on the ground. But that's not... What a dog can do is say, don't do this. I don't like it. Mm-hmm. I do like this. I'm scared. So that's what you could communicate. I can already communicate that to my dog.
Well, I guess what it allows you to do is a deeper understanding of your animal. Like as effectively as animals can communicate with one another, they'll be able to communicate with you.
I need to up my dog's ability to communicate.
We need a Neuralink
better
for
than
your
other
animal.
dogs. That's what I thought we were doing. Listen, it's a podcast. It's going to end at 3. We're going to go for a real long walk. I just need you to calm down.
Shut up for 45
That's
minutes.
what I need. That's what I need.
Yeah, I don't think that's coming. I think that's fascinating because I don't know. What was that? The Benedict Cumberbatch movie where they crack the. Do you know what I'm talking about? The Imitation Game, where he builds this giant one of the giant first computers, and I don't know if it was true or just from the movie, but they got it because everything said Heil Hitler. Every single thing signed off with this phrase Heil Hitler. So they were able to be like, we know some of the letters. You know what I mean?
Wow.
And
it's how they cracked Morse code in World War II, right?
Not Morse code. It's how they cracked the German Enigma machine. Was like this rotating, constantly changing thing that was every day different. And they would put just out the things for the day. And then by the time they would crack it, it'd be 3 days later. So they needed to crack it quickly. And one of the things that enabled them to do it quickly was like, we know a couple letters. You know, like,
we know the H's.
We know the H's. And it's the same sort of idea. It took a machine plus human to be like, wait a second, there's this
I wonder
pattern.
how much Hitler's ego cost him in that war. Because without that, would that have changed the course of the war? I don't remember the movie.
So World War II is fascinating, man. I've learned about it from a couple different angles. There's all these critical technological fronts. It was fought, 1, with the code breakers, which is, maybe that was essential. 2, the U-boats. There was no like radar sonar. So these U-boats were just destroying anything that we used to send to England until, and there's another book that I was reading. It's on innovation. The Navy had sonar for like 30 years. They just didn't know how to put it on a boat and use it, basically. And this one guy was like, we need to use this. And everyone's like, no, this is a crack dream. It's never going to work. Then they get it working and they're sinking U-boats left and right, which completely changed. Now we can arm Britain. Now we can travel freely.
Fascinating.
And then
that was the U.S. that invented that?
It was the U.S. And then they had the same thing was happening with they had better rockets. They had the V2 rocket. Mm-hmm. And eventually, somehow, I don't know the exact story, but we got the Albert Einsteins and all these other guys to just join us. And, they built the bomb, which put a definite end to the war. But yeah, there were these fascinating technological fronts on which this
you
was
talk
fought.
about this sometimes, letting scientists pursue their passions. A lot. I mean, I've read a little bit because I was obsessed with Albert Einstein when I was a kid. But a lot of the scientists joined up because they thought the problem was interesting. Mm-hmm. Like, yes, we want to help the war and this and that, but also the concept of splitting an atom was fascinating to these high level physicists. Yeah. And upon seeing their results, they were actually pretty aghast at their involvement. But at the time, they were so excited to crack the problem that they actually got blinded to the damage it would do.
Yeah.
And then once they saw it go off, they went, oh, we shouldn't have opened this Pandora's box.
I believe that was Robert Oppenheimer, who he sees it go off and he's like, I have become Shiva, destroyer of worlds.
Yeah. Einstein said it too, I think, that he regretted his involvement.
Yeah, it's crazy.
But at the time, to our point, sonar, magnets, Viagra, a lot of these things, they weren't the thing being pursued at first necessarily, or they weren't being pursued for immediate benefit. So yeah, there's just this sense of if you put innovative people together and let them run and fund them, good things can happen from it.
And that's what the book is about. It's I don't think making a terribly bold claim, but it's that you need your artist and your scientist as well as your engineers, and they need to be separate, but they do need to talk on occasion. Be like, so what have you guys been working on? Oh, sonar? Could I have some of that for my ship? Yeah. Like, I think that could help us in this particular way. Yeah, and it was also it's what started air traffic control. People were just constantly crashing, and then eventually they figured out, what if we put a tower here, and we could just signal to where everybody is, and then it cut back on flight fatalities in a dramatic fashion. So cool stuff.
Good one, Justin. Good conversation.
What else we got?
Next is a funny study about how research shows that men care about men's chests more than women care about men's chests.
What?
I had this conversation the other day.
Wait. Fill me in. I don't even understand it.
Okay, so for the study, researchers tracked the eye movements of 82 heterosexual undergraduate students. They didn't say the ratio of men to women in the group, but there were men and women.
Sure.
And they
all heterosexual.
Yep, all heterosexual. And they had to... They viewed and rated the attractiveness of 3 male and 3 female 3D models, which varied in their shoulder to hip ratio. And what they found is that the men dwelled longer on the chest region of the male 3D models with higher shoulder to hip ratios, while women showed no difference in visual attention to the chests of any of the male models.
Fascinating. What did the women's eyes linger on?
It basically concluded that women are indifferent to the size of a chest.
So let's just get
wait. Size of a chest. What? I just want to know. I just want to know, what did the women? Did the females' eyes linger on anything? But
it didn't say.
Arms?
It said it's
just
sounded
said,
like they just
said chest agnostic.
Yeah.
Got it.
It said that the study showed men rate men with large upper body sizes more attractive and rate women with smaller shoulders, smaller upper body more attractive, while women preferred an intermediate size of shoulders for both men and women.
84 people.
No, I know what you're going to say. Go ahead, Charlie.
84 undergrads who it doesn't, were they rating or were they just looking?
They were rating and looking.
Okay. It's just such a reach for this title. Women prefer. It's probably undergrads at one college. It's just that these studies are insane.
Yeah.
We can still talk about it. It's a fun conversation anecdotally to have, and I think it's a great jumping off point. But there needs to be a statistical literacy class which talks about this madness.
Oh, that wouldn't fix it. Well, maybe you could fix it at the consumer side. But yeah, people just want to publish the study and have it talked about, and it's what makes their careers. So I think that they don't want to make it 5,000 people, and they don't want to make it not on 3D models but on humans. That's that's hard. That's complicated. It takes longer.
Sure. So let's go to anecdote.
The one I think is interesting too is that it's a 3D model, because it reminds me a little bit of when there was a study that showed that women thought that photographs of men are more attractive when the men aren't smiling. And the takeaway was women prefer men that aren't smiling, which I think is a terrible reach, right? Mm-hmm. So I think we have to be clear. Women are agnostic to the chest size of 3D models.
84 women.
84 women. 84 women. Yeah. Let's get, so yeah, that's it. This study says that 84 women
it says less than college, because it was men.
At college age are agnostic to the chest size of 3D models. Yeah.
But so here's what I'll say that I have seen in my life. If you look back on some of the iconic, handsome men of my generation, the big one is Brad Pitt in Fight Club.
Yep.
And he clearly was not doing a ton of bench press. And what guys often do when they go to the gym, anecdotally, the first thing they want to hit is the bench.
Well, I will say Brad Pitt in Fight Club is interesting to me because I think Brad Pitt's face is top face ever made by genetics or God. So let's caveat that. But I don't think that people would have thought his body was particularly attractive in person. There's something about the magic of lighting, oil, tan, and a movie screen.
Sure.
Because he was actually like 155 pounds and in pretty good shape. Mm-hmm. And I'm not saying he's unattractive. He's definitely attractive. But the fact that he was the paradigm of male physique.
Shot from a low angle.
Exactly. There's so much filtering, camera angles, lighting, that I actually think if you just saw him walking around with a different face, because again, his face is going to get you, I don't think that you would have done a double take necessarily if he just walked down the street. Even if he walked down the beach shirtless, you'd be like, oh, that's a fit guy.
Sure.
But you wouldn't go, oh my God, that's the best fit dude I've ever seen. So I think, yeah, even that movie is funny, because what you see on the movie screen is not what you would see in real life.
Well, let's go anecdotally on this one. Obviously not a study has been done. How important do you think physical fitness, and we can go from, let's not say that like going from obesity to fit, but let's just say not muscular to muscular is when it comes to being rated on average more attractive by most women? Where does that fit in the scheme of things that men might be working on in order to become more attractive?
Men might be working on?
You could get a cool haircut. You could buy cool clothes. You could go to the gym.
Yeah.
You could become funnier. You could start an interesting business. You could get a puppy. You could. There's a lot of things that guys do. Where do you think that?
I think style's going to carry you more than muscles, honestly. I think I think that being heavy set might be harder to overcome. I don't know. I've been skinny and I've looked like what I look like now. I've never been super heavy. So I don't know. I can't speak to it. But certainly I think in hindsight, the difference between being skinny versus being in more muscular shape is just dress better.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's my experience. The one thing I have got to give some credit to is height. I think that when women say on their dating profiles, you have to be blah, blah, blah height or I'm not interested.
You take them at the word.
That's hard. That's hard to that sucks. That's tough. You know what I mean? I actually think that's probably more important to women than chest size.
I agree. We've talked about this before. I think there's only a few categories in which you are still allowed to just be verbally and obviously discriminatory. And I don't necessarily mean discrimination in a bad way. You're just allowed to say, I don't like this, like not interested. If some dude's profile said like, if you're above this weight, don't even contact me. That guy would be.
If you weigh 165 or over, you're dead. You don't exist to me.
Yeah,
that guy would be lambasted.
Exactly.
But when a woman's like, hey, if you're not
6 feet or
5'11"
6 foot tall or above,
that's just allowed.
And I think that it is. I don't know that it should be lambasted or shamed, but I think that
it's weird. It's weird that we don't, given that we do lambast and shame other stuff.
Exactly.
Especially because it's the least in your control.
Yes.
Like if we're not gonna weight shame, which is certainly more in your control than height, it seems weird that we can publicly height shame.
Mm-hmm. I agree. But even beyond that, I would also agree with your assessment that that is a thing when I would talk to guys of different things and what they're struggling with in their relationships. That was the one that, I've only been my height for as long as I've been through puberty, but that was the one that the shorter guys would be like, dude, this is hard.
Yeah.
And I had to take them at their word. And that doesn't mean that you're doomed. You know what I mean?
No, I know a guy who's a short Asian and he has amazing fashion. He's in great shape. He's got a cool tattoo. And when he enters a bar, he definitely gets like close to, if not the same amount of attention as a taller, muscular guy does. He's definitely optimized himself very, very well, and he draws eyes. So it's definitely not a death knell. We're not saying that it's not overcomable.
I think that one of the things where it does become more difficult, I guess it's not necessarily, but on dating apps where height is a filter, where people can increasingly be like, oh, if you're not Christian, I'm not interested. Or if you're not this height, I'm not interested in. There are dating apps where they have a place to input height.
Yeah.
And I think increasingly you're going to see AI and even just user-generated options to completely exclude swaths of people. And that's
this guy only saw it at a bar. But I do remember he was like a 5'7" Asian, and we went out, and I remember looking at him and being like, damn, man, you look good. I'm jealous of how you look right now. You had better style than me, better haircut. Yeah. So it's definitely not a make or break thing, I think. But I'm just saying, I think in the world of chest size not mattering at all, that's the one thing where when guys are like, yeah, my life's harder because I'm 5'4",
so,
I go,
yeah.
I'm gonna trust you on that.
Let me ask you this. I don't know the answer. I have some thoughts. I'm looking at Harry Styles for a breakdown. He's cool, man. The guy is legit cool. But he's very handsome. And
very famous.
Especially...
Which, by the way, if you had to maximize your chest size and your fame and your only goal is to do well with the opposite sex, go fame. Definitely go fame.
So I do believe that all different types can become charismatic, but his style is this often more subdued, slow, which plays very well with how attractive he is.
Sure. We have two friends who are like that, and they're both incredibly good looking.
So it's I'm not sure how to approach this video, because I think more than almost anyone I've ever done, he's got something that's cool, man.
Yeah.
Like he just has a swagger that comes, I think, from being the man ever since you were in middle school.
Yeah, did you hear how he lost his virginity? It was either from a teacher or a friend's mom, something insane at a very young age.
He's just always been in demand, and I don't think it occurs to him that he needs to impress anyone ever.
Yeah.
Which is palpable. But he's also super freaking handsome, and I wonder when I put it on, when I don't watch the screen, he sounds less charismatic than, say, someone who's even like a Rock or Kevin Hart, who are just big, loud, funny, cracking jokes. He's way more subdued. So how do I... Can you
think of any examples in your own life or of celebrities who act similarly, get good results, but aren't super handsome? Because if so, then I think what he's doing is probably good.
I mean, he reminds me a bit of Ryan Gosling, who has that slow cadence, and then the ones in a while.
Not a super helpful example in terms of sex appeal or lack of sex appeal.
He reminds me of... everyone that he reminds me of is attractive.
Yeah.
So I'll think about it more.
How to be charismatic if you're really good looking.
So I was going to make a video.
Yeah, that video will bomb.
I think I might just say it. And the other thing is, it's also some of the least useful charisma advice, because it comes down to the idea of doing cool versus being cool. And you could do some cool stuff. You could dress cool and wear rings, and you can do that. He also is. Like his mode of being, the speed at which he reacts to other people, it's just so very obviously on his own time, which is one of the hardest pieces of advice to internalize, which is be your own like locus of attention without being a dick to anybody. He seems to be immune from embarrassment when Ellen, for instance, has him play a prank on the pizza guy. He just does not seem to feel embarrassment as he acts like a complete idiot. Nor does he seem to need to ham it up. He just is funny and cool. So this video could be the lamest video ever.
Interesting.
That just sounds like this Harry Styles. Like, he's so cool. There's nothing any of us can do.
He's the best.
But
sounds interesting. I'd like to watch the clips that you're describing.
He's a cool dude, man. I don't know what to tell you. He's got it.
That's surprising.
Yeah.
It's not what I think of when I think of Harry Styles. I think of like boy band guy.
He's got it.
I'll take you at your word.
Yeah.
I'm surprised. I know nothing about him. I wouldn't have guessed that based on the limited stuff I've seen from him.
It's also tough to grab like 5-second moments, because it's a vibe. It's the way that he is, like when he's quiet in the room, and then and this is a point that I can make, he'll just explode onto the scene. Like he'll have done nothing, and then in a quick, swift movement and a quick joke, like now all of a sudden he's captured attention, and then he'll just sit for a while. He moves at his self-set pace, which is the one point that I think I can definitely make about him that is perhaps more applicable to most people.
I don't know.
What else we got?
If anyone listening thinks that's interesting or not, let us know in the comments.
Yeah. I may not.
If you have a better title than How to Be Charismatic when you're really,
if you guys
really
want to
good
vote, I'll give you guys a vote. It was Dr. Phil. That one is actually looking a little bit harder. I'll be honest. Sometimes Dr. Phil does things that I really don't advise doing, and it seems like it's for television. Like he'll get into spats and fights with these 13-year-old girls, that, you know, the dominance matches that don't seem like the best way to break through and help someone. And I don't really want to. I don't know it's what goes on behind the scenes, how involved he is.
Also, do you want to watch 50 hours of Dr. Phil?
It's a lot.
Yeah.
So that's one that I was thinking of. Jon Stewart, Dismantling Crossfire. This was many years ago, where he basically he put them out of business. I just looked. The interview was in October of 2014. In January, they shut down Crossfire, and like the guy who did it cited Jon Stewart as being like, he was right about the show. It's lame.
Wow.
So he just ended that.
You should include that in the video if you do it. I didn't know that.
Yeah.
I remember the moment. I remember the clip.
So it took like 2 months for them to be off the air after that. And they came back a couple years later. So that was the one. So it was Harry, Dr. Phil, that one. Jamie Foxx was another one. And he's genuinely he's also got it. He's funny, outgoing, can tell a story like crazy. So if any of those people, vote for them in the comments if you're watching the YouTube below.
Or if you have a better idea.
Yeah,
let us know
if you have better.
That's why we did Peaky Blinders. We did Peaky Blinders because people just kept commenting it and they kept getting 700 upvotes. Going, all right.
I'm going to watch this show.
There must be something to this. There must be something to Peaky Blinders.
Yeah. What else we got?
Next is a fan question.
Hello.
Hi, fans.
So the first one is from Fernanda from Brazil.
Fernandinha?
Is it your Fernanda?
I don't think so.
So she
That's
says...
so funny. I did have a moment of like, Fernandinha!
Oh my God, Fernanda, I haven't spoken to you in so long.
She says, I'm a doctor, but what I really wanted to be back in high school was a writer/journalist. My parents pushed me towards medicine because my father's a doctor and because here in Brazil, job stability is very hard to achieve. They also thought that pursuing journalism would be a waste of my good grades, but for some time now, I've been writing too for science magazines, and I love it. Most people around me support it and seem to think it's a cool side gig to have, but when I talk about leaving medicine to pursue a full-time writing career, they seem to think I'm out of my mind. There is a prestige around the medical profession that I find to be unhealthy, especially in underdeveloped countries where people have more respect towards doctors than sometimes CEOs, for example, with huge businesses and overall more impact in the world. Do you think you can change people's mentalities about career prestige, and if so, how?
Can I go?
Sure.
So the first thing I would say is I thought there was a fascinating quote when I was in investment banking, which is a very prestigious job in quotes, was when you want intelligent people to do something that's not good for them, bait the hook with prestige. So in any decision, I would say the best thing to do is go completely prestige agnostic and throw it out.
Yeah,
So
assume that nobody was going to be proud of you.
Exactly.
Because it
So-
won't make you feel good that they are.
Exactly. So don't run from something because it's prestigious. I'm not saying prestige is bad, but also don't do anything because it's prestigious. So yeah, if you want to be a writer, but it's less prestigious than being a doctor, I say go for it.
Yeah.
It might make less money, but if you don't care about that, then yeah, do what you care about.
So I have
It's your life also. This is the
Yeah.
other thing. I actually had a fascinating thing. My dad, who loves our company now, initially was very skeptical and wanted to talk me out of starting this business to stay in private equity where it was guaranteed I'd make millions of dollars. But what I realized in talking to him, he didn't have to go to the office every day for 14 hours. He could just tell his son to go do the job, and then his son would be wealthy and great.
Yeah.
There'd be no monetary stress. And if I ever had a family, it came from love. He wasn't expecting to see a dime from me. But when it's not you, it's so easy to tell the person, go do something you don't enjoy, right? So whoever you're talking to that thinks you should be a doctor does not have to go to the hospital or does not have to see patients, does not have to have the day-to-day, minute-to-minute, every single day experience that you don't enjoy as much as writing. So yeah, they shouldn't get a vote. You're the one that has to do your job every day. And so you should do whatever you want. And if you want to make less money because you like writing, do that.
Yeah, I have a lot of reactions to this. One of them is, I think, as you correctly noted, that Brazil economically, I don't know how many years, but at least prestige is maybe 20 years behind the U.S., maybe 30. Doctors were all the rage in the 80s. Everybody needed to be a doctor, and that has dipped. You know, as the
It's
power
still a good
has,
job. It's still a prestigious job.
Yeah, but it's not investment banker. It's not like
tech CEO. Yes, it's
as
not the
money
most.
exactly.
Well, it's cultural too. Different cultures, different ethnicities, I think, have different prestige rankings for jobs.
I think you're going to see in the next 20 years in Brazil, the doctors dip just like they did in the United States of America.
Sure, and tech CEOs will go up.
CEOs go up. So if you're chasing prestige, you're actually, in my opinion, you shouldn't chase prestige. Pretend that you were going to. This is not a good long-term decision. You're going to wind up being a doctor that is mid-tier if the U.S. is any sort of paradigm for how these sorts of things are going with the direction the economy is taking.
But you would still agree to just be prestige agnostic anyway.
Of course. Yeah, I just think that's funny that, my mom was a nurse and she always looked up to the doctors. She thought they were and she wanted me to be a doctor for that reason. Luckily, didn't push me terribly hard, but I just think it's interesting that the world that our parents grew up in, what was so hip to them, what was the bee's knees to our parents. It's like, you guys are 30 years behind. Even if I did care about prestige, you're wrong about this. It's going to be the finance guys. It's going to be the tech guys or girls. So the second thing, to just pile on to what Ben had said, go without prestige. And then what I think will find, Tim Ferriss quote, people are very quick to get in your way before you've started moving. When you're deliberating and on the fence, everyone has a loud opinion. Once you start moving, people get out of the way. It's very, very interesting.
Yeah.
So when they sense that you're uncertain and you could still be a doctor, this is when the cries to not leave will be the loudest. But if you dive in and go, too late. They just get out of the way, as they would for, somebody else who had already chosen to be a journalist of some kind.
Yeah. As soon as we were in Brazil, my dad was supportive every step of the way. Because it's, okay, you're doing this, The other thing, I think the question was, how do I get people to care less about the prestige of my job?
Yeah.
I would also not worry about that. I would not try to convince other people that you're making the right decisions in your life, because that is going to be a lot of energy, a lot of spinning wheels for potentially not a lot of change.
Sure.
I try not to control other people's minds so much these days. And so I'm sure I had people who thought I was an idiot for leaving finance. I'm actually positive there were some guys in my fraternity who I wasn't super close to who talked shit on me when I left. But so be it. I wasn't that close to them to begin with. All my closest friends, super supportive today, you know? And some of them still thought I was crazy. But they just said, that's my crazy friend, Ben.
Yeah.
He's still my friend, you know? So I actually think do it for you. Throw away prestige. Don't worry about other people thinking it's the right or wrong decision. And just think about, what do you value? Do you value income? Do you value freedom of time? Do you value doing something you care about? Write down all the things you value, score it out of 10, and then go do the thing that is best for you. You're the only one who is going to do this every day.
Yeah.
Your friends won't. They'll do their jobs.
So, and here's just one last thing. How do you talk about it? Let's say you decide to be the journalist, and you still have to interact with these people who think this is a terrible idea.
I find people are actually going to quickly warm up to you and actually like you. When you are a journalist and you love writing, or you are a fictional writer, whatever you want to write about, and you love it, very quickly after you get used to talking about it and you're no longer projecting that you might regret your decision or that you're scared, people will be way more fascinated than when you begrudgingly share that you're a doctor, because you're not passionate about it. And at the end of the day, that's all people care about, is what you're projecting about yourself. So when I was an investment banker and I hated it, I got much worse reactions from people than when I met people and I did something I cared about.
When it comes to your parents, one thing that I would consider is that you guys may in fact agree if you get down to values, may still disagree, but you can ask them, look, I'm going to do this. What is it about being a doctor that you most value? And let them tell you, and listen. And I assume it has some money. It's a good job. You're going to help a lot of people. You'll be stable if you have a family. This is very important. It's secure. It's all these, that, and the other things. And go, okay, good news is I also want a lot of those things. You know what I mean? I'm not running away from any of those. I would like to earn a decent income. But the one thing that you didn't mention in there, which is paramount importance to me, is my happiness.
Day-to-day happiness, yeah.
And so I want all of those things, but I have to be happy as well. I think we can agree. Because if I got all of those and I was miserable, I don't think you'd want that for me either. And then, walk through, okay, journalist, yes, I'm going to make less money, yes, or this, but it'll be enough and I'll be happy and I got these things. And push comes to shove. What you can always say, I think it's in a video that we made a long time ago, which is, well, the good news is, if somebody else is, this is what I would do. Good news is you get to make all the decisions for you, and I get to make the decisions for me, because I think if the situations were reversed, we'd both be unhappy, which is a nice way of throwing some shade and being like, look, if I had to follow your stupid, prestigious path, I'd be miserable. But you don't hear me yelling at you that you need to change your job and go do something else.
Yeah. Well, you said something interesting, too, which I think is important, is you can also build a bridge from where they are to where you are. Because, for instance, I don't know, but I would assume that they maybe don't have the same perception of your experience as a doctor and your experience as a writer. I know for myself, I went into investment banking voluntarily. Then I read a book about entrepreneurship and my dreams changed. When I was talking to people, they weren't in my brain for that change. So they don't know the reasons that I wanted to be an entrepreneur. So with my friends, with my dad, once I had that conversation of explaining, listen, I totally get everything you're saying. Let me walk you through why my mind has changed. People are much more receptive. They're much more supportive. They're just not necessarily there for the journey, right? They're, to the point we were talking about earlier, their camera is only on their stuff. So they weren't there in your brain for all the new information you have acquired, which could include how much you hate your current job. It can include the change of your dreams or goals. So yeah, you can, a lot of times, just building a bridge, pacing their reality is really important.
Good luck. Go do what you like and do it well. Don't be a doctor. Unless
you like being
a doctor.
And if you like being a doctor, be a doctor.
Be a damn good doctor. Yeah. I think that's I think it's an excellent job for those who are interested. I think it's a terrible job for people who don't want to be.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, it's one of those jobs that gets so many kids pushed by their parents.
Yeah.
Same thing with lawyer. Then you just get these people that are dead on the inside doing.
No, but my friend,
jobs.
Listen, just to make it super crystal clear, we're not anti-doctor. My friend is an orthopedic surgeon and he loves it. He finds it fascinating. He works in the ER repairing jaws from gunshot wounds.
Yeah.
He loves to talk about it. I only understand like a third of the words he uses because he's so deep in it that he'll talk about the specific names for every tooth. He should still be a doctor or a dentist or whatever you want to call it. So yeah, it's not the profession that's the problem. It's just doing anything that you're passionless about that you don't like isn't worth it.
Sure. What else?
Next is from Nick. He says it's a first question from a longtime listener.
Hi, Nick.
So you guys have shared thoughts on codependent and open relationships as well as addictions. My impression is that you guys define a codependent relationship as any relationship where the partners are addicted to each other. I'm not sure why this is bad if they are compatible. Can you guys clearly define the difference between a healthy, loving relationship and a codependent one? And then there's a part 2 after this.
Sure.
Great question, first of all.
Me or you?
No, go ahead.
So this is one of the difficult things when I make videos for the channel, is that when I step back and I go philosophizing, what would pure love look like? I go, it would look like pure acceptance and a non-neediness and a not a desire for what is best for the individual, even if it meant a separation, right? So the type of love that perhaps moms need to have on the day that they drop their kid off on the college on the other side of the nation, but not the one that goes, no, you got to stay here in our small town.
Yeah.
Right. So that's the type of love that I would say is healthy. And it comes from an understanding that you will not be able to be together forever necessarily. And so the codependent relationship can be very similar to that, with one exception, that there's a top priority, and it's that you can't leave me. You need to stay around, be together, because you are my happiness. And so that, to me, is the fundamental difference. I think, quite frankly, all of the secondary stuff in that codependent relationship looks a lot like the pure love relationship, except that top priority of I need you in the healthy relationship is subbed out for I accept and want what is best for you. That's the biggest difference, even if it means we never speak again. You're not my happiness. You're part of it. Anything else so that's how I would define it.
Yeah, and I think there's degrees. First of all, I don't think every codependent relationship is unhappy. I think probably a lot of happy relationships are codependent. So I should get that out there. I think that there's degrees of this. And so, for instance, if you are in a relationship where you love spending time with each other, the other person would be a 10 out of 10 happy if they went for 1 week with their friends on a fishing trip or whatever it might be, and you are incapable of letting them go do that because you have an emotional anxiety or depression or whatever when they leave. Now you are not allowing this person to do what makes them happy because of your negative emotions from their lack, that absence. That's the addiction part. Their absence for a week causes such causes such intense negative emotions in you that you can't allow them to go do something that they will enjoy. That's the downside of the codependence. That's the downside of the addiction.
That's a great point. That's almost, and I should have included this because that is really one of the defining features of an addiction, which is it's strongest in its lack. So like I would say that many of my friendships are not codependent because while I love having my friends here, when they leave, I do not long for or miss them terribly. Love to talk to them.
Let's say.
Exactly.
I'd love to have them here.
Yeah.
I would love for this guy to come back. My life's better when this person's around. But I'm not in pain from their absence.
Yes.
It's just that I would prefer it because of its upside.
And many of my romantic relationships have been, I mean, not you're gone for a day, but it's painful. If I don't see you for a month, that hurts. That gives me anxiety prior to, and
it's romanticized is the other thing.
And that's how we define our love in many cases.
Exactly.
I miss you so much, I can't live without you, is what we say. And we go, true love right there. And I think, as Ben points to, that creates so many issues where not only can't you separate from the person, but you stop being the guy who wants to go on the fishing trip because he reciprocates that feeling, goes, I don't really want to go. No, it's okay, because he can sense that she's going to be so nervous and he loves her and he doesn't want her to feel that. So now he isn't being him.
Yeah, when you see a relationship be controlling, when you see the other person actively trying to prevent their partner from doing something that their partner would like, that is a function of the fact that it's addictive and codependent. And I think in a relationship that didn't have that as much, because I actually do genuinely think that most sexual or romantic relationships will have some degree of codependence and addiction. I haven't seen one that is perfectly without it, and I think that's fine because you can still have a good relationship with it. But to the extent that you have more of that, is you'll see a more controlling relationship.
And it can be not even overt. I think this is one of the things is you don't even recognize that you're the one who said, I don't want to go fishing, because you intuited so reflexively that was going to upset them, to the degree that one of the signs of codependency is you lose track of your own desires.
Yep. You predict fights.
Yep.
You get guilty about something you haven't done yet because you know it'll upset the person. But what you're doing isn't wrong. Like, obviously, if you cheat, you know it's going to upset the person. You shouldn't do that. That's bad. But taking a night with your friends, taking a trip for a week with your family, these things that shouldn't upset someone, but you sense that they will. And so because of that, you subvert your own desires.
They don't even occur consciously to you.
Yes.
All of a sudden, it's, that's such a long trip. I don't even want to go. What I would say would be more healthy in that scenario would be, I'm completely and totally aware of my desire. I'm perhaps completely aware that this person doesn't want to go. A healthier thing is, I'm going to talk about it. I'm going to say it, but I'm not going to cut my own desire off at its ankles. I'm going to be an independently functioning person who negotiates and compromises with another person. Or if you're me, compromises not as much.
Yeah.
I mostly just do what I want.
No, or at least have it be an overt agreement. There's a really good book I like called No More Mr. Nice Guy, or No More Mr. Nice Guys. I don't remember the exact title, but it talks about how in relationships there are these covert contracts where you would skip a trip because you think a person's going to be upset, and then you would expect some sort of reciprocation from them. Like, for that week, they're extra nice to you.
Oh, they just love you.
Because you didn't go to that
Now
trip.
you love me forever. You love me forever because I didn't do the thing that was going to
that I
make you
wanted
sad.
to do or whatever.
Yeah.
And it's happening so much subconsciously. And so I think that book is really good because for me, it highlighted the importance of just having the overt conversation, whatever it is, of I'd like to do this thing. Well, it would upset me if you did. Okay, then I won't. For you, I will sacrifice. And at least have that conversation above the water, you know, instead of having it be this thing that doesn't get voiced, that gets unspoken.
Yeah.
So no relationship's going to be perfect. No relationship's going to be perfectly unaddicted. This is not a critique of every codependent relationship, but I think that's what we mean when we say that the less codependence you have, the better. The more you can be happy for the other person, even if they're doing something that you're not there for, the more you can accept that space doesn't hurt you, the better.
For me and you and
Yeah. That's just what we're trying to
that's
communicate.
what we're trying to do. Yeah. So what's the second part?
And also, it has nothing to do with open. There was like an open thrown in there, but open, monogamous, whatever. This is just how I feel about dating.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, the gist of the answer was in your guys' response already,
Oh,
kind
cool.
of, but the second part is I am unclear on what the point of a relationship would be if not to get addicted to the person who you are compatible with.
That's interesting.
If this addiction is not the end goal, why not be completely open instead of agreeing on varying degrees of exclusivity?
It's a great point. I mean, what you're essentially saying, and I think Ben said there's differing degrees of codependence of what my lack of you means. But yeah, if go to the extreme, imagine the monk in the whatever, right?
The
Buddha has relationships but controls no one, expects nothing from or of anyone, but is so pleasantly surprised when you show up at his door and he pours you the tea, and he doesn't even have a sexual relationship in most cases because, quite frankly, what a lot of monks find is it gets in the way of this sort of ability
It's
to
hard
just
not
be
to get a
even
little bit
keeled.
addicted,
Yeah, you
yeah.
get addicted. That's why I think sex has been shunned by so many of these monks, because it gets in the way of this. You're right. People want the addiction.
Yeah. No, and to your point, even forgetting, well, let's not say forgetting the addiction, but just looking at it in terms of codependence or fear of loss or whatever it might be. My friend who got into a serious relationship when we were in our early 20s and is now married to the person was debating, should I date her exclusively? Should I not? He was seeing a couple people. And he said, I'm going to make the grand compromise. That's what he called it. And I said, what is the grand compromise? He goes, I'm going to stop sleeping with other people so that she will stop sleeping with other people, which is exactly kind of what we're talking about, which is I don't want her to do this, so I'll stop as well, which is like a different version of I'm going to skip all my fishing trips with my friends so that she will skip all her fishing trips with her friends and we'll never be apart. These are just, these are similar agreements. At least monogamy is an overt agreement, which again, I personally think is better. But yeah, I think in a world with no codependence and no addiction, you would see less jealousy and you would see less controllingness and you would probably see more non-monogamous relationships. I don't disagree with you. It's hard because then you get into this idea of how much is genetically pre-programmed, how much of jealousy is part of human nature. So I'm not here to be a proponent for or against monogamy or openness, but yeah, I think you are right in that you are sensing that is a degree of codependence, addiction control, whatever you might be.
I need you to do X or not do Y in order to be happy, is what that is, right? I mean, that's what monogamy is. If you do these things, I will be crushed.
Whereas I would say a relationship you can look to as an example of what is possible of love, right, is no matter who Charlie sleeps with, it does not affect our friendship. Whether he's not sleeping with anyone or he's monogamous or he has sex with a different person every day.
There's some people that I can't. Exes of yours, right? Like it's
Go
not.
for it, bud. Good. Enjoy yourself.
You could imagine though, and I think that there's a degree of you need fewer
Less.
things from me.
Sure.
But some, and that's kind of what I think Ben and I are driving at is how big is the sphere of things that you need someone to do or not do in order for you to feel good, safe, and loved. Mm-hmm. And what I'm trying to do is shrink that sphere to keep as much of my love as I can in my own control. Like, yeah, Ben goes and does whatever Ben does. It's unlikely to have a negative impact on my day. But when a girlfriend that I had would do something that I didn't like, it could have such a negative impact so
and I
easily.
think another just to highlight, because I think part of the question was, what is your definition of this addiction or this codependence? I call Charlie because I want to go out to dinner with him. He says no. I call a different friend. I go out to dinner with that friend. I can sit at dinner and not think about Charlie in the absence of Charlie. I can just be hanging out with Dan and Brandon, right? In a more codependent, addictive context, you might try to see someone. Let's say you're not married. Let's say you're dating. You don't live together and you hit them up for plans. They say no. And it makes you sad. And you either don't make other plans or you do and you go out to dinner with your friends, but your mind is on that other person. You can't be present with your current company, who honestly, maybe the conversation's different, but could be equally enjoyable if you were able to be present. That's just another example of the difference between a relationship that's more codependent, more addicted.
Yeah.
Whereas I think you'll see in a lot of non-sexual relationships, you're capable of having fun whether the person's there or not, even though it would always be additive to have Charlie there.
And this is, again, there's a lot of ways to define addiction, but one of them that you're touching on is addiction is defined by you're being inspired by lack, right? Like you go to drink because you're sober, and that's a problem. Not because drinking is wonderful.
Yeah, because sober is
because
anxiety.
Sober is terrible. And when you're in a relationship, like you're going out because sitting home alone drives you crazy because you're thinking about that person and where they may or may not be. Versus joy-inspired things are, I'm going to go out with Dan and Brandon because Dan and Brandon are great. Oh yeah, Charlie's not here, but I'm not thinking about all the people that aren't here. I'm doing this in a more joy-inspired way. So that's what I personally am trying to drive to. Fewer decisions made to reduce the perceived lack in my life, and more decisions made to increase joy.
Yeah, if you can do it to a lesser degree, if you can have less addiction or codependence, what it allows you to do is enjoy the person's company when they're there and be happy and enjoy your life when they can't be there.
Mm-hmm. So hope that answers the question. Anything else?
Yeah, the last question
Great
is
question.
from...
Great question.
Yeah. The last question is from a guy with the username shoot@square, and I heavily edited his comment. Cool. So...
There's a lot of swear words in there.
Not a lot of swear words. It's just a lot of broken up questions.
Okay.
You guys are
spliced
morons.
So I hope I get his point across. So he says, "Hey, Charlie and Ben, I'm someone who has had difficulty with newly formed relationships in the past, consistently finding myself in the position where I feel that the other person is not as affectionate as I would like. I realize this means I've failed to understand and then enforce my standards with others. I've recently written out and defined my boundaries, but wanted to ask how best I can communicate and enforce these standards in a way that's not aggressive or overly dramatic."
So what is the standard? That they need someone to be more affectionate?
That the other person is not being as affectionate as I would like.
And this is in a romantic relationship?
I'm assuming, yeah.
Okay, so I think generally speaking, you're not asking someone to not do something. You're asking someone to do something, which I think is a slightly different approach.
I agree. That's not a boundary.
Yeah.
That is a request.
Exactly.
Which I think is different. Those are handled differently.
Yes. And so I think what this is, I mean, where you would probably sit down and go to yourself is, if this is the case, need a relationship with a certain level of affection. This person is not doing it. My strategy, therefore, is not to demand that they do this for me. It is to request that they do because I like them, but also recognize if the answer is no further persuasion is necessary or even advised, because I should just go find someone who wants to be this level of affectionate.
Yeah, I agree. I think of standards and boundaries a lot of times as
don't
especially
do that.
boundaries
Yeah.
as things that you find deal breakers to be. Whereas this sounds like something you would like.
Yeah.
I would say
It could even be a deal breaker, but you're asking them to do something.
yes,
It's a positive request.
yes. Whereas with a negative, my advice would be probably different. But with a positive, I'd say it's two things. If you want to have your dating life include people that are more affectionate, the number one area to do this would be in the filtering process, right? Some people are just less physically affectionate, and I think it's not fair to try to date that person and then persuade or coerce them to being physically affectionate when they're not comfortable with that. What I would suggest you do is go, oh, this person's funny and smart and beautiful and not affectionate, and for that reason, I will tell them that I like them but will not date them, and I will tell them why. Or I will have this conversation with them where I say, hey, you're not as affectionate as I would like.
Are you concerned? Is there something that's getting in the way?
Yeah,
or is this ideal for you?
Yeah, exactly. And if they go, no, I'm just not comfortable with touch, but I really like you, and when I love someone, I am very touchy. Cool. And if they go, no, I think cuddling is just weird. Okay, that's your cue to leave if this is your number one priority. So yeah, sometimes people will evolve and change, but you need to be having these conversations as blameless, judgmental-less inquiries where you're just trying to figure out if there's a fit. And then the second thing, if you find that someone was really affectionate and is not anymore, you can still have that conversation with them, but they're also at some point look to yourself and go, is there something I'm doing potentially that kills the desire to be physically affectionate with me? If there's this pattern where you, and I'm not saying it is, but I don't know your life, so I'm just throwing out the different scenarios. If there's a pattern where you find women who are initially affectionate and then they become less so over, like, repeatedly, then you're the common denominator here. And my question would be, can you look to yourself to see if there's behavior that is making people not want to be affectionate with you? Because it's two things, basically. It's either it's the wrong person or something you're doing, right? Those are the only two things it could be.
Or if there's a third, which is just, oh, I didn't realize that you like, I'm a bit nervous now that you've said this. This is a very easy shift for me to make because
sure,
I just literally just need you to mention it.
Yeah. Great point. Great point. Yeah. But I would not pressure it or try to make it happen in any way beyond just saying that you like it, you know?
Yeah. And you're curious. Yeah.
Yeah.
Hopefully
I like to have that conversation early. I actually very, very early on first dates try to get out there that I'm a cuddler. I like head scratches and massages and stuff like that. And then you'll see right away the reaction. Some people will go, I'm not into that. Some people go, oh, cool. And then you can see they note it because if they like you.
I would ask, like, do you like cuddling?
Yeah.
And then if someone's like, no, I'm like, honestly, I think this is a deal breaker for me.
Yeah.
And it's not in a mean way. It's just this is kind of a critical part of this relationship.
Which I agree. I mean, physical affection to me is huge.
Yeah.
I just try to get it out there as early as possible.
Yeah.
And the nice thing about that is now instead of trying to persuade them to do something, I basically said, this is what I like. And if they like it too, they'll be excited. And also if they want me to be happy in our relationship, they know that I will want it to be physically affectionate. It just gets it all out there in the open. So then there's no coercion necessary later on.
If the answer is no, you just
I just know and I can dip.
And go elsewhere.
Yeah.
So I hope that helps.
And by getting it out early, I guess I don't. That's why I didn't think of the third option. The idea of telling, like, you don't have to have this conversation where you tell them that you like physical affection. If on the first date you tell them that you like physical affection. Yeah.
Cool. Good questions today.
Yeah, great questions. Good job, Justin.
Wonderful stuff. Thank you, Justin. I'm back. No flu, baby.
Yeah, it's nice. Thanks for listening.
We'll
Thanks
see you
for watching.
guys in another episode. Peace.